Everybody loves Metroid, even though nobody actually buys the game, so it only makes sense that Metroid fan games would be so popular since the dawn of human history, because that way you get to be a fan of Metroid without actually buying the video games, which is the one thing Metroid fans will never do. I've spoken about a few Metroid fan games in the past, like another Metroid 2 remake, Metroid Rogue Dawn, and Metroid Planets. All of those are great in their own right, but today I have a bit of a tragic tale of a Metroid fan game that unfortunately ceased development before it could be complete, but one that deserves to be celebrated for what it was trying to do. Now, a fan game getting dicked over by the IP holder is hardly new for fan games of any kind, but that doesn't make it any less sad when it happens. I am talking, of course, about Prime 2D, the ill-fated fan game of Metroid Prime from 2002. The original Metroid Prime took the Metroid formula in a different direction, recreating the sprawling maze-like worlds and back-and-forth progression loop of the 2D games in first person. It was a huge risk, and it could easily have blown up in their faces, but instead, it turned out to be one of the greatest games ever made. Before The Last of Us Part 2 and Expedition 33 were the Citizen Kanes of gaming, this was the Citizen Kane of gaming, unless you count GTA 4 and Heavy Rain. Please stop comparing video games to Citizen Kane. But while it was received extremely well and received a few direct follow-ups, there will always be people who just prefer the 2D titles, and in another world, Prime 2D may well have served the purpose of appealing to those fans as well. Prime 2D is, as the name suggests, a game designed to recreate Metroid Prime in the style of the 2D Metroids, and I think with the limited amount of content that it offers being unfinished and all, it did a pretty good job of that. And with Metroid Prime 4 being released and that chapter of our gaming lives being closed, for better or worse,
so when?
It's as good a time as any to talk about Prime 2D. Now, this is a fan game that had many iterations over a time period of over a decade and a half, restarting development a number of times in the process. Ironically, it has some parallels with Prime 4 in that regard. At the time of the project's eventual cancellation, Prime 2D had a demo, and that's what you're seeing on the screen. This demo dropped in 2021, and it's widely theorized that Nintendo took action specifically because it was the same year that Metroid Dread was released, which, if that's the case, that is just deeply unfortunate timing. This demo is about an hour in length when you go for all the secrets and collectibles and scans, and while that's not a lot of time to spend with a game, the time I spent playing this demo was one of the most heartbreakingly promising experiences I've had with a fan game. I feel like right from the intro, you're in for a treat. You have this really ominous title screen, obviously an homage to the original. You have a slightly abridged version of the original cutscenes redone in the 2D pixel art style, and the music is basically exactly what it needs to be. Some people might tell you that fixating on graphics is superficial and shallow, but it's kinda hard not to do that here because the presentation is phenomenal, especially the animations. This is pixel art at its most appealing. Vibrant, colorful, detailed, and smoothly animated. The world is alive and layered. There's foliage that reacts to you. There are parallax scrolling background effects, real-time lighting like with the scan visor, and Samus animates very smoothly to the point of almost feeling 3D despite being 2D. The reflections on the water are a really neat touch, and I especially love how objects cast shadows against the environment. Like, I almost want to slow down the footage during a firefight to be like, damn, that's a good graphic. And of course, it wouldn't be Metroid if the soundscapes weren't also similarly brilliant. Even though it's only the first 5% of Metroid Prime, that 5% doesn't feel like an unfinished game. It doesn't play like a work in progress. The actual gameplay systems feel remarkably complete and functional. There's a great sense of feedback when shooting the enemies. They blink red, there are sound effects, they blow up. The lasers feel really punchy and weighty. I especially love how they illuminate any surface they touch. I would get easily distracted just hammering the mouse to shoot a billion projectiles in quick succession. Even though the game only seems to support mouse and keyboard controls, it doesn't feel like a compromised way to enjoy the game, and I think using the mouse cursor to aim in 2D is potentially preferable to the way they usually do it. It feels kinda pointless to complain about flaws in a game that is never going to be finished, but I did notice the mouse cursor felt a little slow and heavy, which I could foresee being a problem in the later game when the combat might actually get somewhat intense, but I think the foundation is there for something that, in another universe, would have been polished to a razor sheen. And then there's the scan visor. Like Metroid Prime, there's a scan visor and you can scan pretty much anything in the world. Enemies, environmental details, hazards, items. It's another thing that adds a lot of replayability. Speaking of which, there are a lot of missile upgrades hidden all over the place, which I'm sure you would have needed for all the boss fights that would have shown up later in the game. Prime 2D's demo is short and exciting, despite being ultimately tragic. It's a game you'll have fun with for an hour, and it may leave you feeling sad, but if you're going to check it out, try to smile because it happened rather than be sad that it's over. And that's a wrap for today. Tomorrow will be Christmas Day, and it will be the last game I discuss as part of the 2025 Christmas ROM Hack and Fangame Marathon. I want to thank you for sticking around for this ride and also apologize to those of you who wanted to see a game that did not ultimately appear. But rest assured, there's always a chance I could revisit it at a later date. Like every year, the final video will be a complete secret. I will not be giving any hints as to what it is. You're always free to guess, you're just gonna be wrong, so be prepared for that. Thank you for watching, and Merry Christmas, cousins!